The American housing market is like a balloon inflated past its limit. It's shiny, it's big, and everyone's looking at it with a mix of awe and terror. Because let's be honest, we all know what happens to overinflated balloons. They burst. And when the housing bubble pops, the fallout will be messy. Prices will plummet, homeowners will be underwater, and the economy could take a serious hit. Think of it like this. Housing shouldn't be an investment strategy, it should be a place to live. But somewhere along the line, the idea of owning a home morphed from the American dream to a get-rich-quick scheme. People were buying houses they couldn't afford, flipping them for profit, and driving prices through the roof. But what goes up must come down. And when it does, it's the everyday American who gets hurt. This isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet, it's about people's lives. It's about the family that loses their home because they bought at the peak of the market. It's about the young couple who can't afford to buy a starter home because prices are ridiculously inflated. The housing market is supposed to work for everyone, not just the wealthy few. Right now, the system is broken, and if we don't do something to fix it, we're all going to feel the pain. Let's talk about the Federal Reserve. They're like that friend who keeps offering you tequila shots at the bar, even though you know you'll regret it in the morning. For years, the Fed has been keeping interest rates artificially low. On the surface, this seems like a good thing. Lower rates mean cheaper mortgages, which makes it easier for people to buy homes. But here's the problem. When money is cheap, people borrow more. And when they borrow more to buy houses, it drives up demand, which in turn drives up prices. It's a classic case of too much money chasing too few goods. The Fed's actions, while well-intentioned, have created a housing bubble of epic proportions. Now the Fed is stuck in a bind. They know they need to raise rates to cool down the market, but they're afraid of causing a recession. It's a delicate balancing act, and so far they haven't exactly been graceful tightrope walkers. Their policies have created a ticking time bomb in the housing market, and it's only a matter of time before it explodes. It's not just your crazy uncle at Thanksgiving dinner who thinks the housing market is nuts. Economists, real estate analysts, and even your local barista are sounding the alarm. Nick Gurley, CEO of Reventure Consulting, has been warning about the dangers of a housing bubble for months. His data shows that home prices are wildly out of line with historical norms, and he predicts a significant correction is on the horizon. And it's not just Gurley. A recent survey by Bankrate found that nearly two-thirds of economists believe the housing market is in a bubble. Even the International Monetary Fund has warned about the risks of a sharp decline in U.S. home prices. When experts from across the spectrum are all singing the same tune, it's time to pay attention. The warning signs are everywhere. Home affordability is at historic lows. Mortgage applications are plummeting. Inventory is starting to pile up in some markets. Yet many people are still in denial, convinced that the party will never end. But the music is about to stop, and when it does, it's going to get ugly. Remember those canaries that miners used to take underground to warn them of dangerous gases? Well, Florida and Texas are looking like the canaries in the housing market coal mine. These two states, known for their booming economies and sunny weather, were at the forefront of the housing frenzy. Prices soared to astronomical heights, fueled by speculative investors and a flood of new residents. But the tide is starting to turn. Inventory is rising, bidding wars are becoming less common, and price reductions are becoming more frequent. In some areas, prices have already started to fall. This is not just a blip on the radar, it's a sign that the market is losing steam. Florida and Texas are not alone. Similar trends are emerging in other hot markets across the country. The cracks in the foundation are starting to show, and it's only a matter of time before the whole structure crumbles. Smoke and mirrors fraud in the housing market. Remember the subprime mortgage crisis that triggered the 2008 financial meltdown? Well, buckle up, Buttercup, because things might be about to get just as shady. Fraudulent practices are once again rearing their ugly heads in the housing market. From inflated appraisals to predatory lending, the bad actors are back, and they're ready to cash in. Desperate to keep the party going, some lenders are loosening their standards, offering mortgages to borrowers who can barely afford their Netflix subscriptions, let alone a house payment. Appraisers, under pressure to justify sky-high prices, are turning a blind eye to structural issues and inflated valuations. It's a recipe for disaster, and it's all happening right under our noses. This isn't just about a few bad apples spoiling the bunch. The prevalence of fraud in the housing market is a symptom of a much deeper problem, a system that prioritizes profits over people. When the incentives are aligned to reward risky behavior, it's only a matter of time before someone gets burned. And guess who's left holding the match? That's right, the average American homeowner. Echoes of 2008, a familiar feeling. Remember the housing crash of 2008? Yeah, this feels a lot like that. The warning signs are eerily similar. Skyrocketing prices, loose lending standards, and a whole lot of speculation. But this time around there's a twist. The economy is already on shaky ground, grappling with inflation, rising interest rates, and geopolitical uncertainty. A housing market crash would be like throwing gasoline on an already raging fire. The parallels between the current situation and the lead-up to the 2008 crisis are undeniable. The same reckless lending practices, the same Wall Street greed, the same disregard for the consequences. It's like watching a slow-motion train wreck, knowing exactly what's going to happen but feeling powerless to stop it. The big difference this time around is that we've been here before. We know how this story ends, or at least we should. But it seems like we've learned very little from the mistakes of the past. We're on the verge of repeating history, and this time the consequences could be even more dire. The American Dream. It's a powerful concept, the idea that anyone, regardless of their background, can achieve success through hard work and determination. But for millions of Americans, that dream is slipping further out of reach. The cost of housing has become so exorbitant that it's eating away at their ability to save, invest, and build a better future. A housing market crash would be devastating for countless families. Homeowners would see their equity vanish, leaving them underwater on their mortgages. Renters would face even higher rents as landlords struggle to cover their costs. The ripple effects would be felt throughout the economy, leading to job losses, business closures, and a decline in consumer spending. The worst part is that this crisis is entirely preventable. We know what needs to be done to address the housing affordability crisis, increase the supply of affordable housing, rein in speculative investing, and promote responsible lending practices. But these solutions require political will, and so far our leaders have shown a remarkable lack of urgency in addressing this issue. Let's be blunt. The government's current approach to the housing crisis is like putting a Band-Aid on a broken bone. Sure, they're trying to address the symptoms, but they're ignoring the root cause. Tinkering around the edges with tax credits and down payment assistance programs isn't going to cut it. We need bold, systemic change to create a housing market that works for everyone, not just the wealthy few. One of the biggest problems is the lack of affordable housing. We're simply not building enough homes to keep up with demand, especially for low and middle-income families. This shortage is driving up prices across the board, making it impossible for many Americans to afford a decent place to live. We need to incentivize the construction of affordable housing, both through government funding and by easing zoning restrictions that make it difficult to build new homes. We also need to crack down on speculative investing, which is driving up prices and pushing out families who want to live in these communities. The current policies are not working, and it's time for a radical rethink. The U.S. housing market is a ticking time bomb. The warning signs are flashing red, the experts are sounding the alarm, and yet we seem to be sleepwalking towards another crisis. The consequences of inaction are too great to ignore. We need to act now to defuse this bubble before it explodes and wreaks havoc on the lives of millions of Americans. This is not just about economics, it's about fairness. It's about ensuring that everyone has access to safe, affordable housing. It's about creating a system that works for everyone, not just the wealthy few. The American dream is on the line, and it's time to fight for it. The time for complacency is over. The time for action is now.